We are here to talk about the intersection of creativity and technology, and the fact that human interaction at that intersection is really important to all of us in the business that we do. We have some leaders here from some of the best creative brands and digital transformation businesses. Shout out to Bob Greenberg. And we're here again. These guys are going to discuss what happens at that intersection and how we can all learn from some of the things that they have done and the innovations they've made. We'll do a quick round of introductions, although I see that we are up on the screen, so we don't need to explain who we are and what we do. But just so you guys know, Stephen, why don't you start real quick?
Stephen Moy, LGA, Chief Technology Officer, leading the technology consulting practice.
I'm Winston Binns, Chief Digital Officer of Deutsche North America and practice lead of Great Machine, which is an AI service.
Cool. My name is Al Harnish. I'm the VP of Growth at Prolific Interactive. Our roots are more on product development and strategy and design for native iOS and Android apps, but I run the growth side. So over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen that a lot of the brands that we work with and build experiences for aren't really sure what to do with the app or with that experience once they launch it. So we built out kind of a growth services team to help with that and make sure that we're not just building products to build them, but we're building ones that are going to be really successful to drive the brands that we work with forward.
And I am Deborah Searcy. I'm the regional CEO of Grace Blue. We're a talent strategy consultancy, a global one, and we specialize in executive search and talent matching with companies. So I'm going to start out with a bit of a sweeping statement, so just go with me here. I think that we'll all recognize that there is tension at the intersection of creativity and technology. And I think in this world of data-based decision-making process, algorithmic thinking, AI, and the fear of that, as well as human beings and their concern around their ability to be creative and their desire to be more creative. The World Economic Forum issued a report in 2016 that said by 2020, creativity is going to be the number 3 most valued skill set in the workplace, as well as apparently 75% of people in the world, well, let's narrow that down. 75% of the people in the report said that they feel like they aren't able to live up to their creative potential. So in your 3 views, each one of you, please answer. Does technology inhibit or does it enable creativity in humans?
I guess I can start. I think it could go either way. I guess I think, with the brands we work with, there are companies who are making sure that their technology and kind of the infrastructure that they're using to power their product teams, their marketing teams, their analytics teams, et cetera, is really cutting edge and staying up to date. And in those cases, it allows the creative teams, the marketers, the product managers, et cetera, to do really great work and to be inspired by other brands around them and then to do that for themselves. There are also a handful of companies we work with that are a little more perhaps old school, you might say, in terms of how quickly they want to adopt the latest and greatest technology. And I think in those cases, we see product managers, marketers, engineers, et cetera, who are really frustrated by what they're not able to do because the company isn't really supporting them with the right infrastructure needed to be successful.
In my experience, creativity and technology can not get along, right? It's left and right brain. But when you do have the right set of personalities in the room, magic happens. And over the course of my career, I think, I worked at RGA as well, big fan of the company. And it's where I always say, that's where I got my master's degree in web design and product development. But really, when I entered even a more creative space at Crispin Porter and Bogusky, that's when I learned to supercharge the tech products we're working on. But again, and I'm also a huge Pixar fanboy, right? So I remember I was talking to the CTO, former CTO of Pixar, and I believe that they combine technology and storytelling like no other brand. And I was like, how do you guys do it? And he's like, it's a complete shit show. And I'm like, okay, thank God. So it's a tough thing to manage, but if you're not managing that or making that happen, you're just leaving so much on the table.
Yeah, I also started very early, about 30 years ago. I look very young for my age. When I first started, there was no PC and Macintosh, so we see transformation. But we really witnessing a very interesting era right now. The pace of innovation and disruption is accelerating. And At RGA, we believe, right, we talk about different type of transformation, but I always advocating about technology innovation actually fuel all the transformation from business transformation, experience transformation, any sort of marketing and digital transformation. And I think we are entering an era, really you can mix and match of different technology. I remember I did a talk with some Fortune 500 company about 2-hour delivery. And you would imagine if you want to do 2-hour delivery, you have to go build infrastructure, buying warehouses, become Amazon. But today, actually, through RGA Ventures, we have a startup company called Dark Store. We're able to combine like Snapchat, the Air Jordan brand. After the All-Star game, we launched a 30 years old anniversary for shoes. You can use a AR Jordan, you can use a Snapchat to see augmented reality Michael Jordan, and then geofencing with Shopify, and then the Dark Store delivered the shoe in 2 hours. The shoe sold out in 23 minutes. And I can tell you in my 30 years career, you can never put that together until today. And so I think it's magical. But to answer your question, I believe even more important is the creativity, because assuming everybody have the same infrastructure or same plumbing, if you will, how you communicate your brand, right? How do you communicate every single touch point? Because being disrupted across every single touch point, every single moment.
Yeah, build on that too. I think that we're almost going too far down the data and performance marketing path, because my belief is like smart targeting and personalization isn't worth a damn unless you have something awesome to say. So you need these things working together. And I agree. I mean, the plumbing is super important, and I'm a huge believer in what data can do for business and AI. But we can't forget about the magic.
Absolutely. So on that note, Winston, I know you do a lot of work with AI, and I always think of you as my guru to tell me about anything about AI, because I don't understand it. And you've mentioned before, and I think this is a really important point, that you can design flawless consumer experience. But when emotion comes in, it completely confounds the model. So when you think about that, how does emotion fit into a brand and consumer experience and the design behind that?
It's a good question. And first of all, I will say, I don't really know anything about AI. I'm very passionate about it. No, I always say I'm not an expert, I'm an explorer, right? But I think that it's like 1995 all over again, us young guys. We do remember. But what I loved, I got into this business making websites, products, we call them now, because there were no rules, right? We were making everything up as we went. And I feel like now we're at this beginning of this AI revolution where it's the same thing is happening. It's just going to happen a lot faster. And over the course of my career, I've always tried to find ways to use emotion with emerging technologies to help build brands. And the reason why that's worked is because they tend to be surprising, right? And it's hard to make a TV commercial, a piece of video content that really breaks through. There's so much clutter. But if you do something unique with Snapchat, right, back in the day, or with Slack, or natural language processing, something that feels, again, surprising and magical, it does something. There's a hit. And I think in this day and age, as marketers, we have to strive to really connect our tech products to emotion and consumers. And it's not easy, because and I think that's why a lot of people steer away from it and want it to go to the comfort of data and performance. But you really need people that can get in there, have like emotional intelligence, and figure out how to make people feel something.
Yeah, you summed that up one time and I thought it was really interesting, where a house can have the most expansive plumbing and the best plumbing system in the world, but you buy a house based on your gut feel and your emotion. You don't buy it based on you can always fix the plumbing. You fall in love with something first. So I think that's really important. Stephen, you have a unique take on enterprise, disruptive, and startup technologies, and the mix of those to truly elevate a consumer experience for a brand. Tell us a little bit about that, how you came to that solution, that idea, and then some successes that you've had around implementing that.
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you, in reality, most of our clients, even though you're a startup company or you're a Fortune 500 company, you all have technology debt, meaning you already invested in certain enterprise technology, you have to deal with it, you pay a lot of money for it. But at the same time, you try to innovate at the speed we're talking about in months, right? How you create new services, new product, commercialize them in the market. And we find a lot of time when you have huge technology that hit long ITQ, easier to try different technology with that nimbleness, agility, so you can go test with your product really going to work, especially launching into new market like China or everywhere else. So we work with a lot of clients. We use what we call 5 lenses to look at the mixology of the different technology. First, anything we design got to be adding value to people's life, right? Why would they use it? Second, is it something your brand is differentiated? Because everybody could have arguably built a Lexus skill. Everybody can build one, right? But is it something uniquely only your brand can own? And third is business. Got to generate some revenue, because I've seen so many innovation idea die because you don't have the momentum or buy-in from the executive. And then on the culture side, we believe it's got to be culturally relevant today. Is not don't build another thing that no one really cares. And then technology. So technology is a mix of it, right? Can you afford it? Should I buy? Should I partner? I have this. Can I add a little bit of different type of disruptive technology, like such as Braze, nimbler modern technology, or maybe even partner with a startup, do something amazing. So I think we are entering a era. Technology has become an enabler for anything creativity and also any new business model.
One thing you just said I made me think about is that you actually mentioned technology last, right? Yes. And you're talking more about the culture, the context, and the customer, and the idea first, right? Which I think is really important, because it's very easy to chase technologies. And I think we have to empathize with the customer even more in this day and age, and then figure out what the right solution is once we've connected the dots.
I agree, because I think customer is in control. I do a lot of my primary research on my wife, and I saw her like watching cooking channel, right? It used to be 2 tablet, one cooking channel, 1 YouTube, cooking kale. And then she needed to go to Whole Foods to touch the kale. I don't know why, but you never ask.
Always touch the kale.
Touch the kale, and then we'll go home and bought it online, the Fresh Direct.
Yeah.
So think about that.
Yeah.
We are living in the world like that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Sorry.
I think an example of a recent partner that we work with. Does anyone ride SoulCycle? Do you have any riders in the house? All right, cool. Maybe you guys have seen it if you use the app to book. But they have a situation where they have a super loyal audience. They also have a ton of first-time riders, some of which are like, there's kind of they have the situation where a ton of first-time riders, but not as many of them convert into that second, third, fourth, and become a kind of a steady, a loyal customer. And so they're sitting there thinking, all right, well, what kind of campaigns can we run to really enable this habit where people start to integrate this into integrate SoulCycle and riding maybe once a week or something like that into their exercise routine. Tried a bunch of different campaigns that were a little more one-off. It wasn't really clicking. So like the creative side kind of on its own wasn't really doing the trick. So we thought about, what if we brought the technological side into place and see if we could do something really cool. So what we did, we partnered with their data team, their data warehousing team, and identified, hey, maybe like recommending instructors would be something that we could use to get someone to ride a second time. But we don't want to just recommend any instructor, because if you've had a bad experience with an instructor that's super intense, or who has yelled at you, or who has the musical taste that you just really disagree with, you'll be kind of turned off and either try something else or just be turned off entirely. What we ended up doing was building kind of a machine learning system where we identified who are the instructors who were most likely to, if you're a first-time rider, like which instructors were giving you the best experience, basically, and causing you to most likely return. And that's something you can't really just pinpoint without an algorithm, but we're able to use the algorithm in kind of a subtle way to then surface recommendations for, hey, you might really like this instructor. We know that it's someone who is just kind of a friendlier person, you could say, for new riders, making them more likely to return. But as a new customer, a new rider, it makes me feel really good that this is a recommendation that I want to try out, and we see the lift as a result. So, when you kind of take the creative piece as inspiration, but you find the right technology to really empower that direction, it can go a really long way in kind of bringing the whole thing together.
Yeah, I think that ties into what Winston was saying earlier about you can inundate someone with messaging, but if it's not relevant, it is a waste. And so the creative part of that has to be integral to the messaging. Ali, your business guides companies around transformation, change management as they progress in this technological world. What are some of the key attributes of companies that do this successfully, that start to imbue technology, creativity, focus on humanity and consumers and that consumer experience? What are their common attributes?
Yeah, I think a big one, maybe the biggest in my mind is, well, actually there's two. So A, having the right technology in place to begin with. If any of you know me personally, you know I'm not a very big fan of like traditional marketing clouds, be it Adobe, be it Salesforce. I don't think they're the way of the future, especially for B2C brands. And so what I usually strongly recommend, and maybe one of the reasons I'm sitting here, is moving towards tools like what I call the best-in-class growth stack. It's tools like Braze and kind of all the other vendors and kind of SDK partners that you'll see here. I won't get into too many of those names specifically. But moving towards that, having the right technology, having an open API-driven set of kind of decentralized tools that can be made on more like the director or the VP level, as opposed to one big marketing cloud that's made on the C level, or where the decision's made on the C level, where everyone just has to use. It's often not providing any teams what they need to be successful, and when it does, it takes 2 or 3 times longer to set up and get working. And you know, we see that's a huge pain point across large brands and enterprises that we work with. And there's a lot of politics that prevent that change from happening in a lot of those organizations, which brings me to the second thing that I think is really important. And I think well, what that is teams working cross-functionally, especially on the digital side, product teams, marketing teams, and data and analytics and data warehousing teams working really closely together to understand what all of their pain points are, their challenges in terms of how the tech is enabling them or not enabling them, and then kind of coming to a consensus on what the stack is that they need to move that forward. So what we see brands, especially like Fortune 500, very large brands, be really successful with is ones where they feel comfortable moving away from a traditional enterprise marketing cloud, moving towards a best-in-class stack that is maybe a combination of 6 or 7 tools. And yeah, that's a pain in the ass for procurement. It's more legal work. You know, you have 6 or 7 times more salespeople coming at you for upsells. But at the same time, it really enables your teams to be way more effective if you're able to kind of make that happen in the right way and bring it all together.
Do you have examples of brands that are doing it well with that kind of setup?
Yeah, I'll give you, I'll just stick with good examples. But so we've done some work with Walmart, and actually they're for such a big brand, for literally being Fortune #1, I think they do a fantastic job like being progressive and being forward thinking. I think a lot of that had to do with their acquisition of Jet. I was fortunate to work with a lot of folks at the Jet team a couple of years ago before the acquisition. Super forward thinking group. They were all about using the latest and greatest technology. And then when Walmart acquired them, you know, a big piece of what Walmart said was, hey, Jet, like we want to learn from you and figure out how you were able to grow so quickly, especially on the digital side. They're e-commerce only. Walmart, you know, is really, you know, they have a big e-commerce presence, but they're also huge on brick and mortar. So they said, Jet, let's learn from you. What do you do? And one of the first things that they changed was their entire marketing stack, their analytics stack, and their growth stack more holistically, away from kind of the traditional enterprise marketing clouds and into some of these more progressive tools. In terms of just change management, I guess one piece of advice I could give for people who are in this situation where they're trying to be that change agent is you don't necessarily have to go to, you know, the decision maker and say, hey, I want to rip Adobe out today, replace it with Braze, replace it with these other tools. It's just kind of an unrealistic ask. I think that's a transition that has to be made over the period of years. But what we see a lot of success with is say, hey, in addition to Adobe or addition to Salesforce or whatever it is, they have their place. They have, you know, they're ingrained. They have all these reports they're spitting out, blah, blah, blah. Let's not replace that on day one, but let's start to bring this new stack to life. And then maybe in a couple years, we're going to come to an inflection point where this new stack is actually bringing more value and bringing more creativity or fostering more creativity than what these kind of old school tools are enabling them to do.
That's interesting. I have a last question for you guys, and I'll start by answering it myself because I've done a lot of thinking around this for my own business. In the recruitment executive search business, as you can imagine, you must have a human interaction. So while we've imbued a lot of automation of data, we've imbued machine learning to bring in the data of the audience and the actual just the universe of people who can do the roles that we represent and the clients who might match, or the candidates who match well with clients. Nothing can replace looking in the whites of someone's eyes and understanding what they believe, how they carry themselves. Are they inspirational? Are they, what type of leader are they? And so that's, for me, the one thing technology will never be able to replace in my industry. What, in your experience, in your 3 backgrounds and experience, what do you believe technology will never replace that only humans can do?
Well, I believe they will never replace the brand purpose. I mean, I truly believe in the day today, right? People don't necessarily buying the brands anymore. They join the brands. There's something behind the brand that they believe in. And then together, you collectively creating the brand. So that emotional connection is very important, because we talk about all the technology, we talk about the maturity from, I sometimes call the big 5, the Adobe, Salesforce, like your parents-in-law. You have to talk to them, kind of, but you don't. Yeah, and then you have the disruptive technology like Braze. But in the world we're living in, right, even though you put them together and you fix the complicated problem, that emotional connection is very important. Especially every single moment in the consumer journey gets disrupted by a startup or some disruptor in the market.
I mean, my belief is technology has no mercy, right? I mean, and we have to be careful of it. I mean, I'm really inspired by a lot of the D2C, like Stars, Away Travel, convention, MVMT, Dollar Shave Club, I've been talking for years, because I think they do mix smart data, tech stacks, and performance marketing with creativity. But there's a lot, I feel this pull that's, the soul is coming out of shopping in a lot of ways, and it's the Amazon of the world where it's throughput, efficiency. And I think we have to be careful, because I do believe that we have to fight for brand a little bit. And I think people will choose that. They buy with their eyes. But at the same time, machines are pretty awesome. And automation is awesome. So we're going to see over time, the ad business on the agency side is going to get smaller. It's going to be a mix of mind and machine. But we've got to find that balance.
Yeah, I think for me, and just kind of riffing on that, is, I think the customer experience at the end of the day is defined by the customer's actions. And as much as we'd like to maybe think, for better or worse, AI, machine learning, whatever, is going to kind of define that in the future, at the end of the day, it's the people in this room who are kind of setting up the campaigns, whether that's advertising or CRM or retention, that's responding to the customer's actions and behaviors. And I think there's always going to be a little bit of a give and take. So we might be able to use AI, machine learning, whatever, to optimize our own workflows and make that a little maybe simpler in certain moments. But I think looking at the whole journey, understanding the nuances of that, how that's changing over time, is something that, it's going to be very hard for a machine to kind of do on its own. So we're always going to have to kind of, work with the customer, work with the technology that we have, and that's kind of where that creative piece really comes in, and how do we make that all work together.
Yeah, a final thought for you guys that you can do your own investigation on, because we have 30 seconds left, I think. A consulting firm that will go unnamed, because it is not Deloitte, did a report around bringing in technology and understanding how technology and AI can actually create work that people feel is both creatively rigorous but exceptional. So it can do work, AI can create, according to this study, AI can create work that is meaningful to consumers and meaningful. It can win a Grammy, it can get some awards in whatever format you want. But according to this study, AI will never be able to create the highest echelon of creative excellence. So it will never win an Oscar. It will never create something that makes you cry, emotional, all of these things. And so it's interesting as you think about creativity, technology, and how you can take that back to your own companies. Do a little bit of research. If you just Google it, you can find it. And think about that. Think about how we can help machine learning and creativity combine to create something amazing for our clients. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jonathan.